We are empty in a superficial world. Have you ever wondered why, even when surrounded by people, you still feel completely alone? Why, despite having achieved things that should make you happy, something inside you remains restless and empty? Maybe you're one of those people who perceive that something isn't right with the world. It's not paranoia or pessimism. It's an uncomfortable clarity that makes you see beyond appearances. If you've made it this far, it's because you recognize in yourself that silent uneasiness that few can name. And maybe it's time to understand where it comes from. There's a strange sensation that some people carry through life, being present in the world, but not belonging to it. It's like watching a movie where everyone seems to know the script, except you. You're there, functioning, responding when called, fulfilling your obligations, but inside there's a distance that no one sees. You watch the people around you living their routines with a naturalness that seems almost artificial to you. They talk about the same topics, worry about the same things, laugh at the same jokes. And you? You force a smile, nod at the right moment. But inside, there's a silent observer questioning all of this. This dissonance isn't weakness. Actually, it's a sign that something in you remains awake when the world prefers everyone to sleep. It's proof that your essence hasn't been completely anesthetized by modern superficiality. You feel there's something deeper, more real, but you can't name exactly what. The problem is that this clarity comes with a price, the loneliness of those who see beyond the masks. You realize that most people live in constant performance, playing roles they never questioned. And you stand there, in the middle of this collective act, feeling like a stranger in your own life. This uneasiness is the first sign that your soul is still alive. It's screaming for something more authentic, more true. It's the beginning of a journey that few have the courage to take, reconnecting with yourself. But before moving forward, you need to understand how you got here, how you became a stranger to yourself. Over the years, you learned to wear a mask. Jung called this the persona, the face we show the world to be accepted. At work, you're the competent professional. At home, the partner or family provider. With friends, the laid-back guy. But what about you? Where does the real you fit in all this? This mask didn't appear by chance. It was built as psychological armor, brick by brick, experience by experience. Every time your authenticity was rejected, criticized, or misunderstood, you added a new layer. Every time you had to behave to be accepted, the persona got thicker. At the office, you smile at people you don't like, agree with ideas you consider absurd, and participate in conversations you find empty. At home, maybe you hide your deepest doubts so as not to worry anyone. With friends, maybe you avoid talking about topics that really interest you because nobody would understand anyway. The persona works. It protects you from rejection, guarantees you a place in society, gives you an identity that others can understand and accept. But there's a terrible price to this. The more you use the mask, the more distant you become from who you really are. There comes a moment when you don't even know where the persona ends and where you begin. The cruelest part is that this adaptation happens so gradually that you don't even notice. One day you wake up and realize you no longer recognize the person in the mirror. You see someone who functions well in society, but who has lost contact with their own essence. And then comes the question that haunts: who am I when no one is watching? And this mask has led you to live in a way you might not have consciously chosen. Life became a stage where you can never exit the scene. From the moment you wake up until bedtime, you're performing. Performing competence, happiness, stability, interest in conversations that don't move you. Performing on social media, at work, at home, with friends. This performance logic is exhausting because there's no intermission. You need to always be on, always functioning, always meeting expectations. Spontaneity died, suffocated somewhere along the way. Now everything is calculated, measured, adjusted to what others expect to see. The routine transformed into a theater without an audience, where you repeat the same gestures, say the same phrases, react in the same predictable way. You became a competent actor interpreting a life that isn't yours. The script is memorized, but the soul is no longer there. How many parts of yourself did you have to hide to be accepted? How many dreams were put away in the drawer because they didn't make sense? How many opinions did you swallow because they weren't popular? How many times did you say "I'm fine" when you were falling apart inside? This constant performance takes an immense psychological toll. You live in permanent tension, always alert not to slip and show who you really are. The fear of rejection becomes greater than the desire to be authentic, and in the end, you get the approval you so desperately sought, but lose yourself in the process. And all this acting to maintain a life that, deep down, doesn't satisfy you. There's a type of emptiness that isn't sadness or depression. It's something more subtle, and at the same time, more devastating. It's the feeling of functioning perfectly on the surface, but being completely disconnected from any deep meaning. It's like being a car with an empty tank. You can still run for a while, but you know something essential is missing. This emptiness doesn't scream. It whispers. It appears in moments of silence, and you ask yourself, is this it? It appears after achievements that should make you happy, but the satisfaction lasts only a few minutes. It appears even when surrounded by people, but feeling completely alone. It's the emptiness of a soul that stopped believing in itself. A soul that was so molded by external expectations that it forgot what it really values. A soul that was so criticized and rejected that it decided to hide, leaving only the persona to deal with the world. Jung wrote about this in his most intimate notes, the feeling of being alive but not living, of being present but not connected, as if life were a movie you watch from the outside, unable to enter the story. This emptiness is a calling, not a condemnation. It emerges when your essence tries to remind you that you weren't born to be a carbon copy of others, that there's something unique in you that needs to be honored and expressed. It's the way the soul finds to say, hey, do you remember me? I'm still here, waiting. The emptiness isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a journey back home, to yourself. It's the first step to reconnect with what really matters, with what really makes sense for you, not for others. But maybe you're thinking, I can't complain after all, I've achieved a lot in life. And that's exactly where the problem lies. You followed the script. You studied, worked hard, climbed the career ladder, accumulated achievements. You have the car you wanted, the house you dreamed of, maybe even the relationship everyone envies. On paper, you won. But why then do you feel like you've lost something fundamental? This is the great irony of modern life. You can win the game and lose what really matters. You can gain others' respect and lose respect for yourself. You can reach all the goals and discover they were other people's goals, not yours. Society sold you a list of achievements that should make you happy. Professional success, social status, material goods, recognition, and you bought that list without questioning. You spent years of your life pursuing objectives you didn't even know if you really wanted to achieve. The cruelest part is discovering that, upon getting there, the feeling isn't of accomplishment, but of emptiness. As if you had climbed the wrong mountain and, from the top, realized that the view isn't worth all the effort you made to get there. The question that hammers in your head is, now what? You know how to impress others, but you don't know how to connect with yourself. You know how to appear, but you don't know how to be. You know how to function, but you don't know how to live. The true achievement isn't in mastering the world out there, but in making peace with the world in here. And one of the reasons this is so difficult is that you've gotten used to living fragmented. You are many people at the same time, but none of them is completely you. There's the professional who shows up at the office, competent, focused, always with the right answer. There's the partner or family provider at home, protective, emotionally available. There's the friend on weekends, relaxed, funny, always up for anything. But where are you in all this? Where is the person who has doubts, fears, dreams that don't make sense to anyone? Where is the one who sometimes wants to scream, sometimes wants to cry, sometimes just wants to disappear from the world? This fragmentation isn't accidental. It's the result of years trying to fit different pieces of yourself into socially acceptable boxes. One piece here, another there, never the complete set. As if you were a disassembled puzzle, with pieces scattered across different environments of your life. The problem is that this division generates constant inner tension. You need to remember which version of yourself to use in each situation. You need to alternate between personalities, as if you were an actor changing costumes between scenes. And in the middle of this constant switching, you lose sight of who you really are. Jungian psychology talks about the importance of individuation, the process of integrating these fragmented parts into a coherent whole. It's not about being the same person everywhere, but having an authentic core that remains present in all your different expressions. The big question is, do you remember the last time you felt whole? When you didn't have to hide any part of yourself. When you could be vulnerable, complex, contradictory, completely human. And this fragmentation has an even deeper root: the loss of connection with the sacred. Where is the sacred in your life? I'm not talking about organized religion, but that deep connection with something greater than yourself. That feeling that life has layers of meaning that go beyond the obvious. That perception that there's a beautiful mystery hidden in simple things. Modern life managed to do something that seemed impossible: make everything ordinary. The sunrise became just a signal that the day began. Silence became an emptiness to be filled with noise. Solitude became a problem to be solved. Contemplation became a waste of time. Your rituals lost their soul. You go to work, but it's just mechanical repetition. You talk to people, but they're just superficial information exchanges. You eat, but without savoring. You live, but without connecting with life. True spirituality doesn't need temples or dogmas. It only needs presence, attention, reverence for the mystery of being alive. It's the ability to see meaning in what others consider trivial. It's the courage to admit that there are things you don't understand and don't need to understand to feel their importance. Jung discovered this in his deepest moments of self-knowledge. The perception that there's a wisdom that doesn't come from books or theories, but from direct contact with one's own soul. A wisdom that manifests in symbols, in dreams, in intuitions that escape rational logic. Recovering this sacred dimension is about relearning to feel admiration, gratitude, wonder at life. It's allowing mystery to become part of your daily life again, even if you can't explain it to anyone. But how can you reconnect with this dimension when you're always immersed in noise? The world doesn't stop screaming. Notifications, messages, news, entertainment, advertising. A constant bombardment of stimuli that keeps your mind busy 24 hours a day. You go to sleep with your head full and wake up with it already loaded with worries, plans, distractions. Can you remember any moment of total silence? Not that silence where you're thinking about 1,000 things, but the silence where you're simply present, without agenda, without hurry, without needing to get anywhere. You probably can't even remember. This external noise isn't just sound. It's a form of control. A society that doesn't want you to think for yourself keeps you distracted all the time. It offers you infinite entertainment options so you never have to face what's happening inside you. The result is that you've lost contact with your inner voice. That intuition that guided you, that ability to feel what's right or wrong for you, that clarity about what really matters. All of this was suffocated by the constant noise. You became dependent on external opinions because you can no longer hear your own opinion. You need constant validation because you lost connection with your own internal compass. You seek answers everywhere, except in the only place where they really are, inside you. Imagine what your life would be like with less noise, with more empty spaces in your schedule, with moments when you don't need to consume any content, don't need to respond to anyone, don't need to be productive. Moments when you can simply be, nothing more. Does it seem scary? Maybe that's exactly what you need. And all this distraction also serves to prevent you from making conscious choices about your life. You have more freedom than any previous generation. You can choose your profession, where to live, who to relate to, how to spend your time. In theory, you're free to be anything. But why then do you feel lost in the middle of so many options? Freedom without internal direction is a disguised prison. If you don't know what you really value, all choices become equivalent. If you don't have a center that guides you, any path seems as good as any other. And this paralysis of infinite possibilities leaves you more stuck than any external limitation. Society sold you the idea that being able to do everything is the same as knowing what's worth doing, but it's not. You can have access to 1,000 different careers, but if you don't know what truly moves you, all of them will leave you. You can meet 1,000 people, but if you don't know who you are, no relationship will be authentic. Your choices reveal your values. But what are your real values? Not those you inherited from family or absorbed from society, but those that emerge from your deep experience, from your intimate reflections, from contact with your essence. True freedom isn't in having infinite options, but in knowing clearly what to choose and why. It's in having solid internal criteria that guide you. It's in knowing yourself well enough to recognize what resonates with your soul and what is just noise. Without this internal clarity, you're at the mercy of external pressures, doing what others do, wanting what others want, following paths that aren't yours. Real freedom begins when you stop being hostage to others' expectations and start responding to your own inner truth. But this inner truth is hidden behind aspects of yourself you preferred not to see. There's a part of you that you preferred not to see. Jung called this the shadow. All the aspects of your personality that you rejected, denied, or hid because they didn't fit the image you wanted to project. Your anger, your fears, your weaknesses, your less noble impulses. You spent years building an idealized version of yourself, the rational person who never loses control, someone strong who doesn't need anyone, the professional who has everything under control. But what about that part that sometimes wants to explode with rage, and the one that's afraid of not being enough, and the one that feels lost and vulnerable? The shadow doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It just becomes more dangerous. It manifests in inexplicable anger outbursts, in impulsive behaviors you don't understand, in self-sabotage at the most important moments. It's like trying to keep a wild animal locked in the basement. Sooner or later, it will find a way to escape. Integrating the shadow doesn't mean giving free rein to your destructive impulses. It means recognizing that these aspects are part of you and learning to deal with them consciously. It means stopping pretending you're perfect and accepting that you're deeply human. When you embrace your shadow, something interesting happens. You stop projecting it onto others. You stop judging so much because you recognize in yourself the capacity for the same flaws you criticize in others. You stop living in fear that they'll discover who you really are because you already know yourself completely. Shadow integration is an act of courage, not weakness. It's choosing wholeness instead of perfection. It's preferring to be authentic rather than admirable. It's recognizing that your complete humanity, with lights and shadows, is more interesting than any edited version of yourself. And to do this integration work, you need something that modern society fears: real solitude. There's a fundamental difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is what you feel when surrounded by people, but none of them really see you. Solitude is what you choose when you need to remove all masks and rediscover who you really are. Solitude isn't isolation. It's an intimate encounter with yourself. It's the sacred space where you don't need to perform for anyone, don't need to be what they expect you to be, don't need to justify your thoughts or feelings. It's where you can be completely honest about your life, your dreams, your fears. Society taught you to fear solitude because that's where inconvenient truths emerge. That's where you realize how much your life is misaligned with your real values. That's where you feel the weight of the masks you carry. That's where you notice how far you've strayed from yourself. But it's also in solitude that the most important reconciliations happen. It's where you can make peace with your choices, where you can forgive your mistakes, where you can plan real changes. It's where your deepest intuition has space to manifest, free from the noise of others' opinions. Remember those rare moments of solitude, maybe driving at night, maybe walking somewhere quiet, when you felt sudden clarity about your life, an understanding that didn't come from any book or advice, but from within yourself. That's the power of conscious solitude. It doesn't have to be a monastery retreat. It can be half an hour every morning before the world wakes up. It can be a walk without your phone. It can be sitting in the backyard and simply breathing. The important thing is to create regular spaces where you can remove all masks and remember who you are underneath all of them. And it's in solitude that you can do something transformative with your pain. Jung studied alchemy deeply, not because he believed it was possible to transform metals into gold, but because he saw in it a perfect metaphor for psychological transformation, the ability to transform the lead of pain into the gold of wisdom. Every person carries wounds, disappointments that marked, losses that hurt, failures that humiliated, betrayals that cut deep. The temptation is to try to forget, anesthetize, pretend they didn't happen. But this is wasting a precious opportunity for growth. Your pain isn't an accident. It's a disguised teacher. It shows you where you were being naive, where you needed to strengthen your defenses, where you were placing unrealistic expectations. It forces you to develop internal resources you didn't even know you had. Conscious suffering, that which you don't deny or dramatize, but go through with presence, has immense transformative power. It burns illusions, strips fantasies, puts you face to face with reality. And although it's painful, it's also liberating. When you stop running from your pain and start dialoguing with it, you discover it has important things to teach you. About resilience, about compassion, about the fragility and strength that coexist in the human condition. About what really matters when everything that seemed solid crumbles. Emotional alchemy doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow process of digestion, understanding, integration. But in the end, you discover that your scars became your wisdom, your falls became your humility, your losses became your ability to value what you have. It's not about romanticizing suffering, but recognizing its transformative potential. Understanding that life breaks you, not to destroy you, but to open you, so you can welcome a deeper, truer, more compassionate version of yourself. And it's through this transformation that you can finally come home. There was a time when you knew exactly who you were, before the world taught you to doubt yourself, before criticism made you question your dreams, before others' expectations became more important than your own. That child you once were still exists. Not literally, of course, but as an essence that remains untouched beneath all the layers of social conditioning. That natural curiosity, that ability to get excited about simple things, that instinctive clarity about what you liked and didn't like. The process of finding yourself again isn't about inventing a new personality. It's about dusting off who you always were. It's like an archaeologist discovering an ancient treasure. You dig carefully, remove the debris, and gradually reveal something that was always there, waiting to be recognized. This journey back home isn't easy, because it requires you to question many of the choices you made, many of the beliefs you adopted, many of the masks you wear. It requires courage to admit that maybe you got lost along the way. It requires humility to recognize that you need to start over in some areas of life. But there's a difference between starting over and starting from scratch. When you reconnect with your essence, you don't lose everything you learned. You gain a clearer lens to see what's really worthwhile. You gain internal criteria to distinguish between what's yours and what you just borrowed from others. The person you can become isn't an improved version of what others expect from you. It's a more authentic version of what you always were, before fear made you hide. It's you, finally, without masks, without performance, without need for external approval. This reunion with yourself is the most important work you can do. Not because it will solve all your problems, but because it will give you the only solid foundation on which to build a life that really makes sense, the truth about who you are. If you've made it this far, it's because you recognize in yourself that uneasiness that few can name, that feeling of being alive, but not living, of functioning well on the surface, but feeling a deep emptiness that no external achievement can fill. The journey back to yourself isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. It's the only way to exit constant performance and return to living with authenticity. If you felt that this text spoke something that no one had said before, maybe it's time to deepen this reunion. The ebook Alchemy and Archetypes can be your first step on this journey. It's in the first pinned comment. And if this content made sense to you, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. This way, you help me continue bringing these reflections to other people who, like you, are ready to awaken.